It is 7 a.m. in Shanghai, 10 a.m. in Sydney, and 6 p.m. here in Atlanta. I'm Linda Kincaid, and for Julia Chatterley, wherever you are in the world, this is your first move. A very warm welcome to First Move. Here's your need to know. US President Joe Biden prepares to deliver his final State of the Union before the 2024 election. We're told he'll direct the military to build a port to deliver aid into Gaza. The UN warns the territory is on the brink of famine. Also in Haiti, the government extends its state of emergency as the capital continues its descent into gang violence. All that coming up. But first, in just 3 hours, US President Joe Biden will deliver his State of the Union address to Congress and the American people. It could have a major impact on the course of the 2024 presidential election. The president's speech is expected to lay out his plans for the US economy. It's likely to include higher taxes for corporations and the rich. He's also expected to address the Israel-Hamas conflict and reveal plans for the construction of a port in Gaza for humanitarian aid. It's also a chance for him to push back against critics who say he's too old for office. During the speech, Donald Trump is planning his own brand of counter-programming. He's promising a live play-by-play rebuttal of Mr. Biden's remarks. Ron Brownstein is a CNN senior political analyst and a senior editor at The Atlantic. Good to have you with us, Ron.
Hey, good to be here.
So the President's State of the Union address tonight. But I want to ask, before we get to the content, I want to ask about the state of what we can expect when it comes to his passion, his vigor, his energy. Because at 81 years old, voters want to know if he's got what it takes to be fit for another term, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, 75 to 80% of Americans are consistently saying in polls they don't think he has, in your phrase, what it takes for another term. He can't dispel that with a single speech. This is a pretty much of a safe zone for a politician. You know, there was unusual ad-libbing between him and Republicans last year on Social Security, but generally it's a pretty scripted affair. Those views about whether he is up to the job are probably going to have, if he is going to change him, it's really going to be kind of like sanding away, or scraping away at a glacier, and he's going to have to show it week after week in the way he conducts himself. In many ways, their best opportunity is not so much to change whether people think he's too old, but whether they think he is too out of touch, disconnected, whether he has plans to make their lives better. Those are the fronts, I think, where he can make more progress.
And in terms of making people's lives better, Ron, we know that economic populism is a major Biden platform, promoting the interests of all citizens, not just the wealthy, powerful elite. What can we expect when he talks about his economic agenda?
Yeah, I'm guessing, as you suggest, you're going to hear a heavy dose of economic populism paired with specific steps and policies that they have undertaken to try to make the cost of living more affordable and help families make ends meet. I mean, they are facing, that is the biggest, I think, other than age, the biggest problem he's faced is the cumulative increase in prices and in key essentials of life, particularly groceries and rent. Since he took office, he has a bunch of specific policies he can point to, particularly in reducing prescription drug costs. Tonight, they're going to talk about it, creating a $2,000 out-of-pocket cap for all Americans on the prescription drug spending, Medicare negotiating with pharmaceutical companies to bring down drug costs, bigger subsidies to help people afford health care. I think you're going to see him propose higher taxes on the wealthy and corporation as a way of funding some of the things that were left out of Build Back Better. It became the Inflation Reduction Act, his big domestic policy agenda, and particularly an expanded child tax credit. So there are a variety of ways in which I think he is going to try to deal with what is probably his biggest domestic challenge, the anxiety among people, particularly around the median income or below, about how much prices has increased under his tenure.
And Ron, in terms of foreign policy, we have heard criticism about the US sending in military aid to Israel without conditions. There are Democrats who see that continued support for the war as a political disaster. We know that the US today is planning to build some sort of port to send in more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Will that be enough to turn the tide with voters who may have turned away?
Well, the politics of this are complicated, right? Because on balance, more Americans still support backing Israel than not. It is the issue is and certainly if you are looking for a president who is going to put more pressure and constraints on Benjamin Netanyahu, it's not Donald Trump. In fact, I think the evidence is pretty clear that Netanyahu would rather have Trump uh, in the White House. But within the Democratic coalition, this clearly is an important wedge. And we have seen in Michigan, which is a state that Biden, I don't think, can win without, given what's happening in other places like Georgia. This is a real point of backlash. I mean, Biden has bound himself to a partner in Netanyahu who probably doesn't have his best interests at heart. Who, as I say, would prefer, in all likelihood, that he'd be dealing with Trump on the other side of the table. So I am interested to see how far Biden goes on what seems to be an inevitable trajectory of having to break more decisively with Netanyahu, who has really given him very little and kind of stonewalled all of his requests for, in particular, kind of the diplomatic day after the war. I think you're going to see some breaking with him tonight, and I would predict it's not the last that we're going to see.
All right, we will be watching it closely 3 hours from now. Ron Brownstein, good to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.